Hello.
Now that our honorable speakers have set the tone for today's event, I would like to call upon Mr. Satish Lakkaraju, a logistics industry enthusiast and a moderator for today. Mr. Satish began his professional journey with the industry 27 years ago with TNT Sky Park and has evolved to become an experienced sale and commercial head with a demonstrated history of working in the logistics and supply chain industry. He has worked in various capacities with companies like AFL Private Limited and Dasher India. And in his last assignment, he was working as the Chief Commercial Officer at Agility Logistics India. He is very passionate about life science and patient safety, and he can be seen speaking at various forums in India and overseas on various subjects like unbroken cold chain infrastructure at airports for cargo handling of pharma, perishable exports, etc. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Karvi. My pleasure
So,
to be on the show.
yeah, so now before I hand the reins of the show to Mr. Satish, I would like to inform our audiences that he will be taking your questions in between the panel discussion. So please feel free to drop in any queries that you have. So without any further ado, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure today to be moderating one more session on a subject which is very important and a subject which has come into the limelight during the pandemic. So, I would like to first invite the speakers and my fellow panelists who come with a lot of years of experience. Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair, who's the Vice President and Head of Integrated Electronic SCM for Reliance Retail. Can we have Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair on the stage, please? Followed by Dr. Anil Chinnamandar, Senior Vice President, Retail Planning and Supply Chain from the Landmark Group. Can we have Dr. Anil, please?
Good evening.
Good evening, Anil. Mr. Jason D. Tam, CEO of Newlogy, who is based in Canada. He is the other panelist. Can we have Mr. Jason? Morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Morning. Dr. Dwayne Jutla, CEO and CEO, President for Pure Ledger.
Hello, Satish.
Very good morning to you, Dwayne. And the last speaker is Ms. Corey Banks, the General Manager for QSER platform. Can we have her as well on the stage?
Good morning, Satish. Good morning.
Good morning. In general, people consider the supply chain industry as a male-dominated industry. But it has been a great pleasure from today morning or evening for us in India to see so many beautiful ladies on the stage. And we had wonderful opening remarks today from none other than our Logistics Secretary of India, Dr. Digvijaya. And we also have seen the various remarks that have been made in the opening session on the uses and benefits of the technology. And I think today we do not have a debate whether we have to be tech savvy or not, but I think this has become a DNA for us in our day-to-day life, and there is no debate on it. And during the pandemic, we have seen that we all have moved to a situation of becoming work from home, but how efficiently we can use the technology to really run the complex supply chains, especially in a country like India, where each state is bigger than a Europe country, and where while we don't have time differences, but we have other differences in terms of the topography, in terms of how the consumption patterns change. And we have experts like Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair and Dr. Anil, who can speak about it to start with. And then we go next to our experts from Canada, who can really give us more insights on what technology can do for all of us and make our life a little more predictive. Also, in terms of how we can really be looking at the next few years in terms of what are the likely changes that can come, given that AI, machine learning, OCR, and a lot of other words are the words that we see today across organizations. So I'll start with my good friend Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair, whom I know and whom I've been interacting for many years, to probably throw some light in terms of what the technology part of it could have done much better for us during the pandemic, or what are the benefits that he could have benefited more if we would have had any other options. Over to you, Lieutenant Colonel Vijay.
Thank you, Satish. Good morning and good evening to Indians and the Canadians who are in the audience and the panel today. So, something very nice which Satish said, and something which the keynote address also pointed out, and something which I have been laboring for very long in my mind, that India has been at the brink of adopting technology, but always at the brink for the last about 2 or 3 years, or maybe even longer. That we are just about to adopt some technology, but the whole process of adopting has never got completed. What pandemic has done to us is that it has made us very, very comfortable with technology. Without going to offices, supply chain never stopped really. It continued to function throughout the pandemic period. May it be for supply of medicals, may it be for essentials, it continued to supply. And how did it supply? How did it continue to work is because we took to the technology like fish to water, and now I think there is certain amount of awareness in all the management that, oh, this can happen this way too. uh, Reports, monitoring of processes, productivity, everything happened sitting at home. So there is where the demonstrator or a proof of concept of technology adoption came inside, and going to make a sea of change when the decision making actually comes to adopting technology. Another major thing that has happened is that suddenly e-com took a boom, and e-com business in the country is growing at the rate of around 36 to 38% year on year. So what ecom brought along with it is huge amount of volumes for processing in the warehouses. What it forced the companies to do is speed up the technology decisions that were pending at the companies. However, most of the decisions that were taken in the company were more related to productivity, lesser related to the automation side of it. I'll be really looking forward to hear from the panelists who are the experts in this field, to actually open our eyes more further into which are the areas that we as large, very huge volume uh, retailers or warehouse operators could do in our systems to actually speed up the network, speed up the productivity, reduce the number of errors, and actually bring about the customer satisfaction, that which is the ultimate aim. We read so much about technology that is available in terms of robotics, in terms of IoT, in terms of AI, in terms of automated responses. uh, we only read most of them. We have yet to see some real great technology demonstrator. And like they say, we all are sitting at the fence for somebody to adopt a technology, fail, and we'll improve upon it, is the kind of philosophy most people are waiting for, unless there's some very brave guy who wants to launch himself into it and you know improve on the go. So my take from this panel, besides answering all your questions on the current situation and where we stand in technology, will be to hear from you and see which are the areas we can benefit really from you. Let me tell you, uh, we are sitting in a very lucky situation in the country that 70% of the workforce, or more than 70% of the workforce, is less than the age of 30. We've got a very huge base of mobile users. That means they're familiar with technology. So these are some, I mean, I think after China and very fast closing up, we got the largest number of mobile users. And most of the technology that is coming is mobile based or Android based technology that is coming up, which is easy to adopt. Now we are sitting in a cusp where we just have to take a step and we'll be there. But we require proof of concept in every stage of our activity, from manufacturing to supply, into the primary transportation, into the receiving, into the management of transportation, into optimal use of transportation, into warehouse processing speeds, into routings, into monitoring of the products, everything from end to end. We are just sitting at the border We need a small nudge, which I'm sure Jason, Jutla, Corey, I think you'll push us across the brink and bring us there. Thank you very much, Satish. That's my
Thank you.
introductory piece.
Brilliant, Colonel. Before I go on to Anil, I think one remark that I had to make was that at the household, we all used to budget for groceries, but today we budget for telephones as well as we budget for how much of mobile bills we have to pay, because that became the buzzword at home more than anything, because your smart TVs also, which you all get, are based on all on technology itself. So I'll go over to Dr. Anil now. Probably he can give his opening remarks in terms of the learnings out of the pandemic and on the technology front before we go to the experts.
Thank you, Satish, and then good day to everyone. I have a very, very, unique position to be kind of, probably giving a few cents worth of my experience and so on. I'm an Indian Australian, actually. I've spent a lot of time in Australia and also have a lot of links with Canada. I probably, used to do a lot of, research and other things around nanotechnology, fuel cells, and things like that. And then British Columbia is where I was actually interacting with. And then when I've ended up actually on the retail side for the last probably a decade and a half, I could not choose a better country than India. So Bangalore being my hometown, I actually ended up coming back, actually, giving up my, lovely lifestyle back in Australia, right? So basically what had happened was that, like Lieutenant Colonel Vijay said, actually, probably you couldn't be in a better country at this stage, actually, in anyone's career or life, actually. Why I say this, because not only the e-commerce is actually, booming and so on, the entire omni retail has taken a different, actually, shape altogether. And then I think Satish was talking about lovely ladies and then lack of, ladies actually in the logistics industry. Satish, please don't even be disappointed, because for me, the customer is the queen. Apparel and then footwear accessories are retail customer. My customer is the queen, no more the king, because it is a lady with a smartphone, who decides my fate. It is a lady who knows all about the technology of buying. It is a lady who knows all about, if you asked about pick, pack, and ship about, 5 years ago or 10 years ago in India, no one would have a clue. If you talked about logistics, people didn't even know the spelling of it. If you actually ask them about, what is a delivery partner, what is a tag, what is OT, no one had a clue. But then today, the lady of the house actually knows what is picking, packing, shipping, and she knows what is track and trace. That is the power of actually the e-commerce. Thanks to the giants like Amazons and Flipkarts of the world, they have not only given a lot of knowledge and know-how to the customer, they have also spoiled her absolutely in India. I say this with a lot of conviction, because on an average, I service about 100,000, pieces actually a day. That's the kind of, the orders that we do. By the way, we were doing about 5,000 or 10,000 actually per day about 2 years ago, before, pandemic hit us. So like Lieutenant Colonel actually, highlighted, not only that, COVID has actually given us a turbocharge, it has really, really made us to think on technology and digitization at every step in the supply chain, right from procurement, then, like getting it into the primary freight or through the, warehousing, distribution, and most importantly, the customer journey. Right now, the customer journey is so important, because India is one of the very few countries where you have no questions asked returns. No questions asked returns and no cost to the customer. Plus, try before you buy. A lady typically can order small, medium, and large. And if the retailer is lucky, she can choose one, or she can return all three for no cost. So all these actually features are, guess what, creating a nightmare for the back-end people or the logisticians actually in the back-end, right? So therefore, our customer journey is becoming so important, and it's so focused, in fact, on not only service levels, but most importantly, cost as well. But fortunately, for us in Landmark Group, we already had embraced the omni retail journey about 3 or 4 years ago. We did visit a lot of international retailers, and then we had already adopted quite a bit of the technology side of things. Only thing what actually the COVID did was, it not only gave me a turbocharge, but it also helped me in my budget approvals. So today in the board meeting, the number one topic is supply chain management. Supply chain management used to be actually number 4 or 5 or one of the last ones, which will start at about 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and it would end probably over the dinner table. But now we start with supply chain. Okay, what do you need? I mean, this is actually music to my ears, right? If my MD is asking, what do you need? How much you need on the technology. So, in technology side of things, I think we have really, started investing in heavily in terms of understanding the order patterns, understanding the fulfillment actually logic, understanding the productivity norms and so on. Fortunately, India had already adopted very high level of fulfillment logic, very high level of actually fulfillment level automation and so on. So therefore, I think there is quite a good degree of automation available right now, but that has to go into every nook and corner, because we still have only touched or scraped the surface of retailism in India. Tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities or towns in India has a huge potential. So much so, during COVID, we realized our 80-20 rule got reversed. We used to have 80% from metro cities, 20% from non-metros. Now that is reversed completely, because most of the people have gone back to their native and living in their farmhouses, living in their villages, because the connectivity is really good. Couple more things I would like to say before I finish off. Lieutenant Colonel actually Vijay talked about the education, or actually the number of people who are under 30. One small thing I would like to add to that is, most of those 30, they are all minimum VC 12 or 12 grad, or actually undergraduate, undergraduates in fact. So they're all highly educated, who can read English, who can read the technology, who can actually get a lot of help from the technology. That's on one thing. And secondly, similarly, that each and every one of those employees themselves, they are our customer. They really create a lot of demand. So right now, consumerism, I think in India has a different flavor altogether, different, in fact, expectations altogether. I think once again, thanks to the e-commerce and so on, the consumer is probably right now the queen, and she is driving the technology through and through. I think with the help of all the participants and the panelists, in fact, we certainly can get a lot more know-how into customer acquisition, processing, distribution, most importantly, customer service as well. That's what I'd like to actually, express, my few views, in fact, at the beginning.
Thanks, Dr. Anil. Before I go on to Jason and then to the ladies, but I fully agree and endorse to the view that the ladies actually determine our supply chains, because if they stop shopping, I know what is going to happen. So I do keep encouraging my children also. Says, guys, you have to buy, because the more you buy, the demand on the supply chain also increases, because if you all stop not buying,
we will have no jobs.
we will not have jobs. And the debate also comes now is that should we be working for a tech company or should we be working for a supply chain company end of the day, because we see to be spending more time to understand technology nowadays. So with a lot of things, so maybe Jason, with all that you have heard both from Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair and Dr. Anil, maybe you want to probably touch upon the subjects of your choice in terms of AI or whatever it is, and what benefits it can draw for us in India or anywhere in the world. Jason, we can't hear you. No. So, so, so what I'll do is, Jason, I'll come back to you while you fix your technical difficulties, and this is what happens to us. So we are used to technology that we cannot live without it. So maybe I'll go to Dr. Dwan to probably throw some light in terms of the same question. Is that India is complex,
Check.
and okay, Jason, we can hear you now. So probably you want to speak.
Is this better now?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Apologies. No, I was gonna just say, Satish, thanks for introducing me there, and you asked me to link up based on what I heard from the previous speakers here. I'll just share that I have some links to India myself. I've been there several times. My parents were both born in India, and if I want to say that my exposure at first, probably the most phenomenal or logistics system was the whole Dabawala system in India, where my father was born in Mumbai. So I have some links, and I share that because I think the culture, essentially, society is what drives supply chain. Dr. Anil mentioned, like, the customer is the queen, but effectively, I talk about supply chain for society and understanding the culture in each of the different geographies that at least we serve. My technology company, Nulogy, is in over 20 countries. So in each of those different geographies, there's sort of a different dynamic. But ultimately, the way that we all consume products has a supply chain to it. So I'm sharing that because my genesis story was identifying that all these commodities that effectively then get made or converted to a product that's consumed by a consumer has that supply chain, has an impact to the world. And we're there to build more sustainable supply chains for society. That's what Nulogy is all about. I think we're at an incredible time, not only because of the demographics of the consumer, the age of when people are entering the workforce, that you expect technology, but certainly, as you mentioned, the mobile phones as well. You have this public cloud, you have dynamic computing, you have this availability of data. I remember speaking at a conference over 15 years ago, and I'd ask, who trusts the cloud? And no one would put up their hand. Now, if you ask anyone who trusts the cloud, if you don't put up your hand, you're like, that's incredible. So it's the availability of data, the ability to do AI and ML on that data, make that rich and useful, and also this whole app economy. And I want to make sure that we focus on this app economy and think of apps as sort of the phone. But I think what that's being done in supply chain is one of the hardest. Supply chain is hard, and no one will solve the problem alone. So to get to this end-to-end supply chain, you're gonna actually need apps to solve very specific problems. I'm a triathlete. I'm a cyclist, and I share this story because I use probably 6 different apps. I use Garmin, Strava, Training Peaks. And there's all these IoT devices that will look at my power, look at my speed as I'm training. And I share that because they all talk to each other. So all these technology companies in different spaces, I think ultimately really need to talk to each other, interoperate to provide the end-to-end supply chain, then can better serve the consumer. Now, days gone by, I identified that people were trying to predict and forecast, predictive planning, demand sensing. What we focus on is supply sensing, because we think that agility beats forecasting any day. You cannot predict that future. So how do you then do supply sensing? And supply sensing is leveraging your supply partners, where brands today are making products, but they're not making it themselves. They're making it through a supply chain, through a contract manufacturer, through a contract packager, through a third-party logistics company. So a lot of our customers, the top 10 3PLs globally, use Nulogy, from DHL to FedEx to Schenker. There is almost every single large 3PL that uses Nulogy today. At the same time, some of the largest brands use Nulogy, including Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal. So we're in food and beverage, cosmetics, home and beauty, some of the largest supply chains there. And we identified a long time ago that there was these enterprise systems. People would know them as enterprise resource planning systems. And they were all very much nodal, like it's all about me. But supply chain, as we know, is you can't, no one succeeds alone. So you actually need to collaborate with others. So we've developed a multi-enterprise solution. And the multi-enterprise solution that we provided or we've developed enables that collaboration, deep collaboration, eliminates sort of the a requirement for manual processing of data, but allows multiple parties to share this information and apply AI and machine learning to that information to be able to optimize their own state. And that, I think, is a sort of a different mindset. We call it a me to we. So where systems in the past architecture were designed to have very enterprise solutions, it's all about networks today, and networks within supply chain and sharing and collaboration of information. So I think, I want to say that I'm looking forward to this conversation. My point of view is that the future is going from that me to we, going from demand, sort of forecasting and planning, to supply sensing, plugging and playing supply to be able to respond to a demand. To accentuate that in an example, earlier this year, like the pandemic, sure, it was described earlier as it was a black swan event. I'll describe another unpredictable event. Cardi B. Cardi B is a rapper, okay, in North America. And you wouldn't have expected this. She posted an Instagram, and it was in the news, in Instagram, a picture of her. It was a bit provocative, as she normally is, wearing some pink slippers, okay? And in that moment, the internet went ablaze. Everyone was searching for hot pink slippers. It was the #1 search term that day, and she was wearing Crocs. And Crocs are not even, they don't even sponsor Cardi B. My point being is that Croc pink slippers sold out by 47,000% that week, completely sold out. Unpredictable event, you would have never known. Their website even went down. So my point being is that the way that consumers discover products, see products, whether it be online, in store, through social networks, is entirely different. That journey from a consumer, from discovery to delivery of product, is entirely changed. And you need systems that actually are fundamentally different, architecturally different, and have to talk to each other to make the consumer experience what we expect. So I just want to kind of root that in an example in a consumer story.
Perfect, Jason. I think you touched upon critical aspects, and supply sensing was something which was a takeaway that I would look at. And I'll now go back to Dr. Duan for a simple reason that how can you have a conference where you don't speak about blockchain, more so when the government is thinking about having its own currency in India, and there was an article that came out today about it. Probably you could probably throw a larger light on how the blockchain thing can probably be more useful in the supply chain scenario, given that there are very few used cases currently that we can see.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Satish. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so good morning, everyone, evening, those of you who are in India. So yes, with respect to blockchain applications, we know that the killer case for blockchain has been digital currency. But in supply chain, there is a lot of utility for it, even without a currency. And so when you look at, for example, what our company has done, we do not support a digital currency on our platform at this time. That's not to say that we couldn't integrate with central banks' digital currency in future, or one that is highly adopted in future. So, but coming back to your initial question, Satish, about how blockchain could be useful to supply chain, I think what I would like to do is build on the excellent point that Jason made, in the sense that, for his example, where as a triathlete, he has, 6 different apps doing different aspects for him. And it's the same type of situation we have in supply chain, that there are a lot of existing systems that have been implemented in supply chain. And we have this ability to layer with new technology that has new capabilities. And one of the nice thing about blockchain is the ability to collaborate, actually, and to be able to to have multiple sets of eyes on certain situations in supply chains where you can provide better control. So, for example, what our company does is that we bring environmental, social, and governance controls, additional ESG controls, onto supply chains. And one of the reasons we're doing that is again to address needs from the consumers, from governments, from associations, from the industry, the supply chain industry themselves, and the brand manufacturers themselves, and others, around concern for environment, for social aspects like child labor, and governance with respect to anti-money laundering, conflict financing, etc. And so you have this ability now to give information in near real time to a whole number of stakeholders who've never been connected before. It's almost like if those of you who remember electronic commerce, 20 years ago, there was a big promise of extranets. I always say that the blockchain technology is almost like an extranet done right, that now you can collaborate securely with a whole host of different systems to get new information, to have people in Europe and people in India at the same time who are in management getting near real-time information so that they can react appropriately to prevent wicked problems like child labor problems. And that's a big progress forward for supply chains when we can hook an application that would give better environmental, social, and governance controls. So, for example, at Peer Ledger, our focus is totally on having a trusted, collaborative, digital, reg tech, and climate tech blockchain-based SaaS platform that basically bundles near real-time transparency and traceability, best-of-breed greenhouse gas protocol management, and sustainability analytics for global supply chains. And so in that sense, we're bundling a number of different things. We actually support, 6 different use cases, and we pulled 2 from environmental area, 2 from social, 2 from governance, and we show how we can layer this on a blockchain-based traceability platform. The reason we're doing this is because companies have, despite a lot of technology adoption in some cases, and in other cases, because you have the different size companies in the supply chain, you have got small and large. And in the case of the small ones, they may not have sophisticated systems. They may still be on pen and paper or Excel spreadsheets. And of course, all the version and controls with Excel spreadsheets. But the big issue that happens across all of this when you have a whole mixture of different platforms that don't interoperate is that you get opacity in your supply chain. And so then you can't answer really important questions like, are my products, components ethically sourced? Does it contain banned substances? Am I managing risk well? Or am I financing conflict or flirting with brand apocalypse? And we've seen this in some of the sectors that we've worked in, where businesses have actually shut down their units, big profit-making units, because the reputation incident that happened was too big to bear. Right? I mean, you're seeing companies like Facebook, changing their name now again for various governance issues, right? And so we have a saying here is that we would like to help companies get down to ESG 0 events. So 0 negative environmental events, 0 negative social events, 0 negative governance events, right? And some of the other questions that supply chain opacity prevents firms from answering is, for example, does my supply chain reflect diversity, justice, and environmental integrity? How do I offer proof that my product achieves all of this? So how can we offer proofs directly to the consumer? that is happening, and it's possible today. We show it, for example, in a number of industries. One goal being an example, an industry where we've had a footprint for a long time, and right now we've got a refiner that gives out their apps to their clients, and they can click on our system. So there's a link to our system in one of their apps, and they can see the entire proof of provenance, exactly how that material has been handled, how it moved through the system, etc., in a visual form. And basically, they're communicating directly to their consumer with those kinds of applications. And so, as all the attendees, the panelists have said this morning, you have a mixture of technologies. We're not just working with blockchain. We will work with mobile apps. In fact, a mobile app is part of our platform. We have API as part of the platform, and a portal, a web portal. And so, you may deliver the ESG type information to your consumers through their apps, because they're always on the smartphones. And the other thing about that group, that under 30 group, is that they have said through numerous studies that they will flip to another manufacturer or another brand if the brand, even if they've been with them for 15 years, if that brand does harm to planet and people. So we know that this is a big issue for our millennials, and seeing that India has lots of under 30, we expect that this is going to be a big issue going forward, and we would have these applications, blockchain-based traceability applications, that we can layer onto existing supply chains. So there's that part, and then the other part, because it's so collaborative, blockchains can remove some of the fragmentation that exists today in the industry, and to also improve on agility. So again, there are excellent foundations on which we will build. So, these applications are not tossing away the other applications. They're like Jason correctly said, they need to work together. We all need to work together to provide the maximum value to industry.
Thanks, Duan. I'll quickly go to Cory Brank, who's been patiently waiting for the last few minutes. But how can we have a conference with Canada and we don't speak about artificial intelligence, surely? And given that everyone has been speaking about it, and probably, at least from my side, that's a subject of a larger interest, because you would want to know what that could do to the supply chain industry. Probably, if Cory Banks want to touch on that and any other subject, the stage is yours.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just wanted to, I'll take a slightly different tactic, but build on what both Jason and Don and the other panelists have been talking about this morning. The way that we're approaching things at Quasar Platform from a supply chain perspective is we need to build up into the more robust and full solutions. And when you look at where we're starting from in supply chain, there is a need to get more data much more quickly than we have in the past, be able to react more quickly than we have in the past. And so how do we do that? How do we get data into the cloud so that it's available to everybody and it's super performant, and then we can collaborate? So those are some of the themes that we've heard this morning. How we're doing that at Quasar Platform is really unique. We have 80 or so different data connections that we're pulling in, and some of them are weird. Some of them are emails that we're getting from class ones that tell us that here's the rail cars that are going to arrive at your facility. And so we use AWS artificial intelligence and AWS Textract. Amazon Web Services for those that, anyways, we pull it in from AWS Textract and we turn that into real data. We take data from old antiquated systems from 1960s technology that provides you information on an RFID tag that is on a rail car that tells you where the rail car was when it passes that particular point. We take data from IoT, so from GPS location sensors and other rail car health sensors. And so where we've evolved from originally was we were going to just be this IoT, we were going to get all this data, and then we realized that the data is not necessarily easy to get. And we have a lot of fragmentation where we've got a lot of small business partners that work with us in the industry. So to get the data, we've had to be very creative. And so for us, it's all about, getting the information in the first place. Let's get the data into the platform. Let's make sure that it's automated. You don't have to spend a lot of time, entering data, looking for data. One of the biggest value propositions for the cloud and for what we're doing is that we're eliminating manual effort. So as we have these labor shortages and challenges in Canadian supply chain sector, where we have a challenge with getting qualified people in supply chain, being able to take away that very manual effort to get data. In some cases, we're walking track with pen and a piece of paper in the rail industry to figure out where the rail cars are, or where are my trucks, or where are my assets and stuff like that. So rather than spending our time doing that, we now have this big data universe that we could then leverage, right? We can take that and we can start to build on it. We can use blockchain and artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to then further automate and make that data more intelligent and more performant. So I think it's all about taking this one step at a time, getting your data into the supply chain, understanding what you can do with it, eliminating waste from your supply chain so that you could be more efficient, you could be more responsive to world events or other, weather is always a problem here in Canada. When it hits -40, things get a little crazy. And so, it gets a little bit nuts. So for me, it's all about how do you build those blocks very slowly over a period of time in order to move yourself forward. And to do that in a really small sort of way, we failed a lot at Quasar. Like, I'm the first one to say we tried something and that didn't work. So we try the next thing, and we tried something and that didn't work. But instead of spending 2 years or 3 years failing at one thing, we've spent the last 4 or 5 years failing at a lot of small things. So we try something in a very small way, very low cost way, and then we move on. So for me, when you're looking at supply chain and you're looking at supply chain transformation, it is a change management process. It is about iterating through, trying things out, not being afraid to fail. Most organizations I know are not necessarily excited about failure. They don't necessarily like when you spend a bunch of money and don't get quite the result that you're looking for. But it's important if you want to innovate and you want to bring technology to the next level in your organization, you need to create that space for people to try something and then have it not necessarily work. And so for us, we use the cloud, we use the AI, machine learning technologies to help us get the data and manage the data and make sure that we've got it all. We're tracking, only about 4% of the available addressable market in Canada, because there's 1.8 million rail cars in Canada, and we only track about 62,000 of them at this point. But we're starting to grow, and we've spent the last 4 years building that foundation. Now, I think you could do it faster. Like I said, we bumped our elbows and skinned our knees a little bit along the way, made some mistakes. But I think with the right partners and with the right sort of initiatives, you can definitely make inroads on supply chain technology. And it's not as hard as it used to be. And it's much, much faster to get to where you want to go than it used to be. And so if I were to leave anyone, I'm a supply chain person first, as I mentioned, a technologist second. And so for me, it is all about what's the data that we need to manage our supply chain. We need the operating data on where is it, what's happening to it, what status is it in, what events are happening. And then we also need the information on what are the financials related to our supply chain. I never persuaded anybody in my career to change the ways of supply chain and how things were being adopted without a return on investment and without a value creation statement, and I can tell you that there's a 4 or 5 time return on investment in investing in digital technology and investing in cloud-based services. The return is significant, both from an increased profit, but also from a decrease in cost. And so the compelling arguments and reasons why you would adopt new technology is because, yes, it is better for the environment. It's required from a collaboration perspective, but there is a huge return on investment to the companies that invest in technology and technology performance. So for me, I, 7, 8 years ago, didn't even know what the cloud was. I'm one of those older supply chain people. It's like, what is that? But for me, the education and the learning, the trust that I have in the cloud, the ability to disseminate data across large groups of people very fast, that's all going to enable us to react more quickly and then optimize our supply chains because we have better, faster, stronger data that we can share across multiple parties. So I don't know if there's much else that I have to say about that, but for me, those are the reasons why you invest in technology and why you take your supply chain to the next level by investing in digital AI and machine learning.
Thanks, Kerry. I think I had that question whether I should be in the tech side or on the supply side, but you clarified clearly that you're a supply chain person first. So I think it's better to identify myself as more as a supply chain person than a tech person, and not get into these issues generally that the tech people talk about user interface or user experience versus business impact to complexity in certain cases. On which access should I be really be focusing upon? Since the organizers has just told me that we've got the last few minutes to go, so what I would like to do before I do the summarization, probably start with Dr. Anil to just tell one takeaway that he would probably want, for the tech side of it, which the organization should be looking at in the coming days. And then I'll go over to, so quickly in 1 minute to each one of the speakers. So over to you, Anil.
Thanks, Satish. I think, I just picked up a few aspects from my co-panelists. In fact, I think what Jason mentioned about was demand sensing. I've written a lot of articles around it because traditional forecasting has gone through the roller shutters right now. Nobody looks at for traditional forecasting anymore. So it's all about demand sensing and how can you actually build your supply chain agility to kind of cater to those changing demand actually. So that is one thing probably I would really spend a lot of actually money and time. Secondly, Dr. Duan actually mentioned about money side of it, right? But ma'am, for us actually in supply chain, inventory is cash for me. Inventory is my money. So therefore, inventory is nothing but it's actually a different form of money. So I would definitely spend a lot of actually money and efforts to improve my inventory holding and reduce the number of points actually. So try to have, for example, at Lanma Group, we are right now holding inventory at one place, servicing through various warehouses, and we have converted most of our stores into servicing centers as well, fulfillment centers. So that way, the inventory efficiency is also very, very important for us. And then I think lastly, I guess, because the data is so cheap in India for the average consumer, you have to be up to it in terms of giving them, whether it's a dashboard or the track and trace ability, or even if they are little huge in their service levels and things like that. So I guess in a nutshell, I guess you need definitely lots of these smaller applications which are probably going to uh, be an amalgamation of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, I guess. And therefore, there's a huge ecosystem right now in Bangalore where lots of these smaller applications are coming and trying to help this customer journey. That's what I would like to actually leave you with. So all those three things is where I'll probably be spending a lot of my time and then money as well. Thank you, Satish.
Thanks, Dr. Anil. Colonel, over to you.
So, to the experts in this panel, see, the Western world and the modern retail in the rest of the world is about 60 years young. We are just about maybe 20 at best, 10 or 12 to be more better. So, actually, when we're looking at solutions, we are in a hurry. You could have used the word faster, and I caught on to that word. So there are three levels of execution that I as a head of supply chain look at. So one level is where do we introduce such technology that you're talking of at the tactical level, that is the pure ground level warehousing operations. Then at the operational level, which is the planning level, which is just about the tactical operations, and then at the strategic level, which you're talking of the ESGs and things like that. So there are three levels of implementation of technology that we'd like to hear about. Once we talk of the larger frame at the strategic level of what technology can do, uh, it really does not give us all the answers that I, as a head of supply chain, am looking at. So when we speak next, if these are bifurcated into these three different divisions, I think it'll be much more useful for I'm a through and through operations guy. I can't think beyond operations maybe. All right, but I'm a through and through operations guy, and daily my biggest task is how to get the operation better. Right. So these three places, when we discuss in future, if we can bifurcate this into these three levels of tactical, operational, and strategic level, I think it'll be much more fruitful, is my view. And that's what I would request, or I would want to hear more about from you when we meet next. I'm sure we'll meet again, Jason, Corey, and John. Thank you very much. I think Satish has lost his connection temporarily. I think I'll take on meanwhile, and we'll go to Jason first. We'll follow the order what Satish set up. Jason, your views, please.
I agree with your comments on the executional and the operational in three levels, and I think that they all, if you don't have a strong foundation, what I've heard from others, if you don't capture the data accurately, if you're not capturing data cleanly, and we focus on is capturing data. We take our customers through we call a 4C journey, capturing data externally, being able to connect that data in, collaborating on that, and adding cognition. So if you are not having cognition, meaning AI and ML, and specifically to root this in a story of what we do with the Scale AI in Canada consortium, we brought together about 8 different 3PLs, a couple of large brands, including Mars, and also some 3PLs and contract manufacturers and packagers to capture data externally, to be able to supply sense on that data on the manufacturing supply chain, so that a brand like Mars can see their inventory like it's their own, can see their capacity like it's their own, can track and trace and do a recall like it's their own data, even though it's manufactured, packaged, and distributed by a third party. And that whole sort of dynamic of what the value is, both to not only the brand or a product consumer brand company and its supply base, is that mutuality to kind of bring parties together, reduce the blow-up effect within the supply chain. And the AI allows one to then add cognition to predictively cluster production to maximize production runs, and also cognitively source raws and packs materials. So whether it be corrugate, whether it be just sugar and chocolate and so forth, things like this, how do I cognitively source that based on that demand signal and the different tiers of supply chain? So I think just sort of giving you guys some examples of what we've worked on here in our Scale consortium with our customers.
Thanks, Jason. I had a technical issue, but I think I'm back now. So probably we go to Dwan for a closing remarks, and then Corey for the final thing before I summarize.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to build on our panelists' really excellent comments. So I'd like to pick up on, on where we are strategic, definitely with respect to the ESG risk and minimizing ESG risk in supply chains, and look at how, like Jason with his 4Cs, we spend a lot of time optimizing the customer onboarding process, so that we've got it down now to 12 hours 6 2-hour sessions training, and one could be onboarded. And what that does really for the supply chain, across the supply chain, whether you're big or small companies, it's the same amount of time to onboard. And in addition to that, you have this ability to go all across different companies. So it's almost like, you're looking at a millennial falcon, if you know that Star Wars reference, looking down at all of these different supply chains and suppliers and the supply chains all across, and you can make this link all the way through, right? And at the same time, you're able to then collect output-based GHG information, so greenhouse gas information. We know that climate change is so important right now, and do the calculations on our platform and have it at the highest level of accuracy. So if we go to the tactical level, we talk about the emission factors and also the initiatives that companies are taking. So between two different points, they may use electrification of the transport, etc. And I think it's for another day for the elaboration of that. But I really love what you said, Colonel, about talking at those different levels and bringing it to bear. So absolutely. And I know we had a conversation earlier this week where we talked about the need for standardization. So as we have all the different systems speak, I think we will all here be doing more and more work in encouraging standardization across industries and within industries as well, in order to grease these supply chains to really work together seamlessly. Thank you.
Thanks. Corey, maybe for your closing remarks.
Thanks, everyone. I think the final remarks that I would leave is it's a big world out there. There's a lot of different technology options, service providers. For us, we're looking at, we focus predominantly on rail, which means that we're not going to be all things to all people, which is okay. And what it means is that we need to collaborate. And so we have a core philosophy of collaborate to compete. And how can we offer components of what we do as a service offering to a company that may have their own digital transformation strategy? Or how can we offer the components of what we do to potentially a competitor or a complementing competitor, as we call it? How do we become the widget that they use, or the add-in technology that they use in order for us to collaborate collectively with our supply chain partners? And so I would encourage everyone to think about collaboration. How do you be very unique and very protective of your own intellectual property, but take the abilities of the people around you and leverage them and use them collectively to move supply chain technology and supply chains forward. It's a global and systemic challenge that we have, one that affects all of us, one that we need to solve and solve sooner rather than later. And so for me, the only way we're going to get there is by doing it as Jason mentioned, this is a team sport. And this is something that we need to do together collectively. So hopefully these relationships and conversations that we're having between Canada and India and ourselves will help us move forward collectively. So for me, that's what I would leave everyone with, is just let's collaborate to compete and see how we can collectively work together to bring the greater good forward.
Brilliant, Corey. I like the word collaboration and compete, surely. And I think that gives a larger benefit to grow for everyone, both as India and Canada. There's a lot that we can learn from all of you, as much as we, like Colonel mentioned and Dr. Anil mentioned, there are a lot of things on the ground that we know better than someone sitting on the other side. We can help you to get the right data and the information to get the right solution out, because there's always a debate, what should we be using? But since that debate can always be there, but I think the way forward is that we should definitely collaborate and compete to grow further. I will now hand it over to Karvi Rana while we transit into the B2B sessions. It was my pleasure to be hosting one more session, and lot of learnings that have come out of it. And I think Jason's point of demand sensing and the blockchain part of it from Dr. Dwan have really opened more eyes for all of us. Thank you so much, and it was a great evening today. Parvi, over to you as we transit.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Tariq.
I think we are facing some technical glitches with Carvi.
Okay.
So, what I will do is we are now switching to the networking session, the B2B networking session. So, now as we pull down the curtains for our panel discussion, we are breaking to this solution oriented networking session.
Yeah.
And I would hereby request everyone to go to the lounge area. After this, the social lounge will open up, and everyone can join the tables that are being delegated to the Canadian technology companies. So after the lounge area, we will commence our event.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.